It is the 7th of the 9th, 2025. The time is 25 minutes to 11. That means, as always, one thing. As far as F1 news and F1 centric threads, there are a couple that we need to talk to. Arvid Lindblad, under the umbrella heading of who's going to partner Maximilian Verstappen next year. So too, Max has come out and said he could have driven quicker in the Mercedes that set the previous lap record, Lewis Hamilton's shot side. So too, we'll talk about Snowflake, F1 and McLaren toe settings. I didn't even realise this. The two protagonists for the Drivers' Championship, Oscar Jack Piastri, being asked to tow Lando Norris into Q3. What are we talking about? This is nonsense. I will go scorched earth because it's unavoidable at this stage. So too, we'll talk about Russell on the mediums. We'll talk about the Isaac Hajar Carlos Sainz beef, and we'll talk about Lauren Mekies' comments that have gone largely unnoticed at the press conference on Thursday. In the first instance, let's talk about what was going on. Brett, Max, Drew. It's going to get techier than techie things. Eddie, it's going to get techier than techie things. Talk about Max Verstappen in the first instance. Here's what he said. Yeah, it was a lap record, but whatever. Standard fare. Especially when you consider that since then, the last time that Lewis Hamilton set a 118.8, they've resurfaced. Can take more curbs. Ergo, you would expect the track to be quicker. If you were to give me Lewis Hamilton's car then, I would be able to go quicker because it was barge board settings. You'd be able to take more curbs with those cars than you can this. Oh, the humanity. And again, the F1 community does one of these. How dare Maximilian Verstappen insinuate that he would be quicker than Sir Lewis Hamilton? It's a conversation, though, an argument, right, that we're going to have between now and the time when the cows come home. Is Maximilian Verstappen faster than a prime Sir Lewis Hamilton in a fire-breathing dragon Mercedes W11? Listen, it's a conversation, F1 barbershop talk, but I don't doubt for a second that Maximilian Verstappen could go quicker, especially when you look at what he did yesterday and understand the nuts and bolts of the lap. He had less downforce on there around the track in Monza that's traditionally low and medium downforce, and that would make sense. But when you see a fire-breathing dragon in Lando Norris 1.0 in an MCL 3.9, a double brake duct MCL 3.9, he should have been quicker, Lando. He's a brilliant driver, super quick in terms of absolute terms, performance, but yet and still, Maximilian Verstappen gets it done. Let me tell you where he got it done. And again, you can go and check out the ghost car, the side-by-side that F1.com, puts out. Here's where we got techie. Lesmo 1 and 2. That's where you'd expect Lando Norris. That's where Lando and OJP had been gapping the rest of them because they have more aerodynamic efficiency in that McLaren. However, Maximilian Verstappen through Lesmo 1 and 2 and Ascari was just more committed, it appeared, in the ghost car comparison. Ergo, the dude deserves to drop it on pole. And some may say that the dude deserves to win the race a little later on today. We go live in T-3 hours. It's going to get techie. Remco, it is a difficult question. And we'll never know, right? It's hypothetical. It is properly barbershop talk. We'll never know the answers, but bloody Nora. Who would back against Maximilian Verstappen these days, especially at the altar of Lando and Norris? I say that to say this. I apologise, Maximilian Verstappen, for ever doubting you and betting with my own money that Lando Norris was going to drop it on pole for Monza. But he had all the bloody advantages. He had the car, and ultimately this is always going to be 70-30% the car if you're talking contributants as a percentage of the whole in causation terms. But again, Max Verstappen is the difference maker, and that's why Toto Wolff will stop at no lengths between now and next year to ensure that he has the car, the package, the petrol, everything in order to sign one Maximilian Verstappen, amending for the mistakes of Christmas past when he had the opportunity. He didn't do it in 2015. And then Nico Rosberg did one of these. I'm out. Gone. Oh, and by the way, I was reading this article on Autosport, and this is, he did hear me, didn't he, Max? Maximilian Verstappen heard me and he was like, all right then, Cameron, I will see you that and I will raise you this. So you want to lose money, Cameron? Betting against me. I'll have some of that. Go on, let me tell you about this toe thing, because I cannot. I am about to go scorched earth. Forgive me, Lord, for I know not what I do. Context is this. For the longest time, McLaren Okay, so they have the best car. Props to them. You can't blame them for the dominance, for a monopoly of a drivers and constructors championship. You blame the rest, the likes of Mercedes, for not stepping up. Scuderia Ferrari, the red car with the yellow badge and black prancing horse, and all the hype that comes with. Changed 90% of the car. Why? They had the quickest car towards the end of last year. Finished in the constructors championship only 14 points adrift of McLaren. So why would you go and change all of your bits and bobs as if these rule and regs are going to ensue, carry on more than just this year? And they are not. It makes no sense. But I digress. There are other teams that should have bloody played catch up. Mention no names, Red Bull. Where is their car? Enrico Balbo and Pierre Vacher were meant to be heir apparents to the last airbender Adrian Newey's throne. They've done nothing. Fudge all since, apart from embed within that RB21 more oversteer than Maximilian Verstappen wants. That's not good enough, but yet and still, it would be nice if we could rewind. Zach Brown loves to talk about, the racers and all this stuff and the essence of F1. Well, the essence of F1 is competition, sir. Excuse me for going scorched earth, but I can't help myself. I read this article and I'm like, what is going on? He went after me, Remco, and rightfully so. I'm a numpty. I am stupid, in the words of Charles Leclerc. However, Nina, we need to talk about McLaren. Look, Zach Brown always wants to talk about the legacy of Ayrton Senna and all this other stuff. And McLaren, and he's put the papaya colours back on, Bruce McLaren settings. And you've got to love that to a greater or lesser extent. However, what I don't like is that in 2025, when the competition for attention dollars is broad and deep, TikTok, social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc., mention no names, esports. Now, all of a sudden, we've got an opportunity to see another 1989 for the avoidance of doubt. I'm talking about Senna and Prost. Beef, pure automotive pugilism. That's what I want to see. That's what we want to see. If, again, the share price of F1 is going to do one of these. What I don't want is to rewind back to 1995 and a young boy called Cameron at a grammar school is the only one, in addition to one other student in the class, that speaks the language that is F1. This keeps me up at night. I know, however, if the season continues as it's going, that's what's going to happen, that nobody will watch F1 for Pete's sake. So why can't we have a proper fight between OJP and Lando Norris? The guys at Motorsport, again, not all F1 publications are created equal. All F1, get it right, Cameron. All F1 publications are created equal, but some are created more equal than others. Motorsport magazine is one of the go-tiest ones. And when they're talking about this championship of the driver's variety being too polite, then you know it is too polite. After you, Claude, why can't we get some teeth out? These two in OJP and Lando are very good drivers, while capable of going hard. So why then am I reading an article on autosport.com that says that Tom Stollard, Oscar Piastri's race engineer, demanded of his charge OJP that he give Lando Norris a tow in Q2. The context is this. Lando Norris made a critical mistake on his banker lap in Q2 and there was jeopardy. For a second there, it looked like Lando might not even make it through to Q3. Then let him not make it through to Q3. If he's made a mistake, then let him make it through to Q3 in and of his own steam. Surely this is F1 for Pete's sake, and you're competing for a championship. You mean to tell me, chat, that McLaren had race engineer of Oscar Piastri ask him to facilitate that his rival for the Drivers' Championship gets through to Q3? What do we do? This is nonsense. This is absolute balderdash. Still I rise, you're an absolute legend. I'm going to read this out to you because otherwise you wouldn't believe me. You couldn't write it in the book because nobody suspends their disbelief to that extent. It's nonsense. Here's what Tom Stollard said, and we missed it. If you can help Lando, this is Tom speaking to Oscar Piastri, his charge during Q2. Oscar, if you can help Lando, quote, if you can tow Lando up to turn 4, but just make sure we don't impede gap 3. What? What do we do? Honestly, that makes no sense to me. Look, under normal circumstances, argues this Autosport article. Under normal circumstance, that's perfect. Do you know what I mean? It makes sense. But when you're competing for a driver's championship, true that Oscar Piastri is 34 points down the road in the championship, but yet and still, who knows what's going to happen? Oscar Piastri could DNF today or at any time between now and race 24. Every point matters. You think I'm going to help the only rival that I have in the championship get through to Q3 after he made a mistake in Q2? Behave yourself. And this is coming from a chap who had money on Lando. Let him burn at the altar of his own errors of the unforced right. That's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I don't want to hear anything from McLaren or Stella, as brilliant a mind as Andrea Stella is, or Zach Brown. I don't want to hear anything about the purity of the sport and the racing. They, to me, represent, on the back of that, help Lando Norris get through to Q3 Oscar. On the back of that, they represent nothing if not F1 snowflakery, and I've had enough. I've had it. They've built a brilliant car. Of course, they have Rob Marshall. Get it. Double brake, that's flexible. I understand it. It's genius, and it's the fastest car by miles in F1 at 2025. In all probability, they'll be the fastest car in 2026. They'll have the God tier Mercedes power unit. They'll be using the God tier Petronas fuel potentially as well. Like, do you know what I mean? I understand. I get it. I understand. But that, ladies and gentlemen, if ever there were snowflakery in Formula One, then that is it. Lando Norris makes a mistake in Q2. Oscar, can you give him a toe to make sure that your only other driver rival for the championship gets through to Q3? If I were Oscar Piastri below, what are you talking about? No chance. What do you want about? No, I'm not helping him get through to only for him then to put it on P2 ahead of Oscar Piastri. Listen, the prosecution rests. That is nonsense, Max. Honestly, that makes zero sense. I can't reconcile myself for that automotive pugilistic equation. That's nonsense. I hope Oscar Piastri, listen, I like myself a bit of Lando Norris because he's a good driver. He is a good driver, but I hope Oscar Piastri nails him going into turn one, or better still, karmic justice nails him going into the second chicane in exactly the same way. Round the outside, two trailer park girls go round the outside, just the same way he did in 2024. Because if F1, if past this prologue, F1 history doesn't repeat, but sometimes it does rhyme. Oh, and by the way, toe, give your... what are they... Honestly, it's too early for me to go scorched earth, chat. It is too early, but McLaren leave me with no choice, bro. This is wild. McLaren would have never done this back in the Lewis. They would have never ever done it. Not in Lewis and Alonso, not in Lewis and Button, not in Button and that. They would never... Button and Alonso would not have engaged that. No, can you imagine... If Ron Dennis had told Alain Prost, listen, mate, could you just give... Yeah, I know you're racing Ayrton Senna, your rival in the other car for the championship, but he made a mistake in Q2. Could you just give him a toe to make sure he gets through to Q3? Alain Prost would have done one of these. What are you talking about, mate? Don't talk to me. Don't ask me no stupid questions. But I digress. Let me tell you about Russell on these mediums. Toe. Absolute nonsense, McLaren. Let me tell you about Russell on these mediums. Watching FP 1, 2 and 3, you would have seen that George Russell had God-tier market-leading pace on the medium tyres. In Q3, however, Mercedes made him put on softs, to which George Russell said, softs? I thought you heard me. I'd asked for the mediums. Why didn't you put me on mediums? Well, the obvious answer is this, mate. When you put on mediums and did those God-tier race timesheet topping times in FP3, King George Russell, you had to bring those tyres in, right? Anywhere between, when he topped the time machine in FP3, you will recall, the most discerning-eyed amongst you, that George Russell did those on 4-lap old mediums. Ergo, there was a reason for that. You had to bring them in. Those mediums needed 4 laps to bring them into their optimal temperature window. In Q3, did George Russell have 4 laps worth of time? Absolutely not. So their hands were forced. George Russell kicking up a storm, as he usually does, for no reason. Oh, and by the way, I need to talk about the Red Bull circumstance, because a couple of things going on. Isaac Hajar in the first instance was like, what are you doing? What's this Carlos Sainz fella doing? This is the first time this year, round 16, rookie Isaac Hajar hasn't made it out of Q1. If I recall, he will start on 16th on the grid. 16th. There was a storm brewing around Isaac Hajar. There is a growing furore, a momentum demanding of Red Bull that they promote him to the seat next year, particularly as you see Arvid Lindblad is struggling now. He's meant to be the next one. In all probability, he will be at Racing Bulls next year, not Red Bulls. The chap alongside Maximilian Verstappen, he has a name, I think, and his name will be Isaac Hajar. He's been brilliant this year, Rookie of the Year by miles. Anybody that argues anything different is having a laugh, smoking something different. However, Isaac Hajar had a bit of a mare. First time not to make it out of Q1 this year, round 16, and that has to mean something. Isaac Hajar jumped out the car post-qualifying and was not having it from his old mate Carlos Sainz Jr. Now, Racing Bulls in the championship, you'll be aware, are now fighting with Williams in the constructors and drivers standings. They're the best of the rest, leaders of the mid-pack. At the altar of Isaac Hajar's charge, Jimmy V, the one that they call James Vowles, is critically aware of all this. And so sent out Carlos, apparently, allegedly, sent out Carlos to intervene in Isaac Hajar's all-important hot lap in Q1. Isaac Hajar jumped out the car and he was like, I see you, Williams. I see you, Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz had no business being out there. He'd already set his lap. Why was he trundling round, intervening, impinging upon my progress? That's what Isaac Hajar said. Potentially, they need to investigate that. But I don't hate it. This stands in stark contrast, diametric opposition from everything that McLaren did. Of course, that's what you're supposed to do. If you have the opportunity to hinder the progress of another team, but within the rules, why wouldn't you do it? For this, ladies and gentlemen, is the weird and wacky world of F1. Leave no durable competitive advantage stone unturned, surely, unlike these McLaren bods. Oh, Oscar, could you go out and give Lando Norris the toe? No, I can't give Lando Norris a toe. Are you unaware that I'm competing with that dude in the championship? That my gap in the championship, now 34 points, will become bigger if Lando Norris doesn't make it through to Q3. Absolutely ridiculous. Sainz has been hindering lots of gas. I mean, sometimes you gotta get your elbows out. No, maybe it's me being stupid. Maybe it's me being too much of a fire-breathing F1 dragon of a fan. Old school settings. Sainz is driving frustrated, as you'd expect Max, to be fair to him. He's driving a little bit frustrated, but he's got a gap to bridge in Alex Albon. He would have been expecting at the outset to nail Alex Albon, and he has not. Soon as that isn't the fastest car, Oscar and Webber are out of their mate. Well, you've seen that they've got a contract coming to expiry in 2026, but we'll talk about that a little later on today. I want to tell you about this as well. This is interesting. Ted Kravitz on his notebook, again, shed some light on some plots and narratives, some news bits and bobs as far as the weird and wacky world. There is the F that wonks that I didn't know, often overlooked. Here's what Ted Kravitz said during his notebook. In the first instance, he referenced Lauren Mekies talking about the power unit. This is interesting. If we're having the conversation under the umbrella heading of whether Max will stay at Red Bull for 2026, here's why it's important. If they don't build the car, if they don't have the power unit, if they don't have the reliability, Max will purvey his circumstance, the F1 competitive landscape, and go wherever he wants. He'll have his pick of the litter. Toto will have him. Of course he will. I'd argue that Zach would have him if he could get his hands on, lest we forget that Zach Brown picked up the phone last year to have a negotiation conversation with Max Verstappen when Oscar Piastri hadn't signed. Do not get it twisted for a second. This is a piranha tank that is F1, and they will stab each other in the back to get an inch of durable competitive advantage, Zach Brown included, unless, of course, that's at the altar of his beloved, the prodigal son, his prodigal son, that is Lando Norris 1.0, Dustin from Stranger Things. Here's what Lauren Mekies said, though, about the power unit. There's been rumour for the longest time that the Red Bull collaboration with Ford is not going well. You understand that power unit will be the driver of any advantage, just like it was in 2014, Mercedes split turbo hybrid settings in 2026. Fudge up the power unit and you will be nowhere. Your championship campaign will fade to black. That's the chat in Middle England amongst all the engineers who are closer to the circumstance than you or me or we. Lauren Mekies had a dangerous bout of truth serum during the team principal's press conference. Here's what he said. chaos chat, almost confirming the rumour about the Red Bull power unit in conjunction with Ford. Lauren Mekies said this: "It will be silly to think that we'll be operating at the level of Mercedes and Ferrari out the gate." What? Is that a confession, Lauren Mekies? Christian Horner would never confirm such a rumour. Max Verstappen will be listening to that, and it'll be, next thing you know, you'll be taking pictures on Toto Wolff's jet or yacht again. That's a confirmation for me, chat. He said that he didn't want to confirm numbers necessarily, but that that the power unit of Red Bull and Ford won't be on the same level as Mercedes and Ferrari by dint of their legacy and heritage and the expertise that they have. That's done. Full stop, new paragraph for Max Verstappen at Red Bull. What, you think he's going to stay there now in 2027? Absolutely not. Not when he has the opportunity. He can go wherever he wants. Chat. Mercedes, McLaren, Scuderia Ferrari, any one of the aforementioned teams will sell their gran to get a whiff of the signature of Max Verstappen. You know what I've said about Toto already. Toto will drop kick in the face an outperforming George Russell or a Kimi Antonelli if that means that he can get a whiff of the signature of Maximilian Verstappen. Owen, he continued: "This is important. Confess the Red Bull sins," he says. That's what he's done. I couldn't believe it hearing it. I was like, what? But let me go back and listen to this press conference, because there's always gems in there between tyre deg and the power of the toe, minus projection. So we'll talk about turn one in a minute, Remco, because it's going to get taken. Let me tell you about this finally as you round third base. This is important. Talking about who's going to partner Max Verstappen next year, there's been chat about Arvid Lindblad. He's just yeeted it into Alex Dunn during F2. That's not to say that he won't get the promotion, because Helmut Marko likes him. He sees him as the next one. Not the next Max Verstappen, maybe. That's too reachy, too ambitious. But the next Red Bull champion after Max Verstappen, if indeed he leaves next year. What does that mean? Well, favourite, the most likely outcome in probabilistic terms is that Arvid Lindblad gets the promotion to Racing Bulls and races alongside Liam Lawson for 2026. And then Isaac Hajar will get the promotion, since he said that he's ready for anything, notwithstanding the RB21 and its very temperamental driving circumstance, that Isaac Hajar, Rookie of the Year, will get the promotion alongside Maximilian Verstappen. Why am I saying that? Because Lauren Mekies, when asked twice per Ted Kravitz on the notebook, what will happen to Yuki Tsunoda if he gets demoted? Surely there'll be a place for him at Racing Bulls. Lauren Mekies denied all knowledge. Well, I can't speak to the future. I don't know whether Yuki Tsunoda... Are you sure? So you mean to tell me that you can't guarantee Yuki Tsunoda has a role if he gets demoted from Red Bull at Racing Bulls? Lauren Mekies did one of these. I know nothing. I'm not... I know nothing. I cannot confirm or deny. I plead the fifth. He wouldn't confirm that Yuki Tsunoda-san, legend that is, would have a place at Racing Bulls if not at Red Bull. Ergo, take this one to the bank. Since we know that the Honda relationship has always been one of these between them and Red Bull, right? They were tight. The collaborative project, as far as their power unit, yielded fruit. Championships, some say both of the drivers and constructors variety. However, as far as Tsunoda-san, it's always been said that he's more a Honda driver than a Red Bull racing driver. I've heard it said a gazillion times with people more closer to the circumstance than I. Here's what that means then. $20 million is how much Honda are paying Red Bull Racing to have Yuki Tsunoda in that seat for 2025. When that money goes away, what do you think is going to happen? Before this year, Honda were paying Red Bull $10 million per year to have Tsunoda-san in the Racing Bulls car. They paid them an extra $10 million, you'll recall, to have him at the head table alongside Maximilian Verstappen. What do you think happens now when the Honda go across to Aston Martin, formerly now of the Red Bull Racing parish? Of course they're going to pull the rug from under Tsunoda-san. No longer are they motivated because there is no longer a relationship. No longer do they need to foster rapport and corporate social responsibility as far as Honda are concerned. They don't care. They have no relationship as of 2026. So what do you think is going to happen to Tsunoda-san? What? Especially as he's underperforming materially. Maximilian Verstappen. You heard him the other day say that, listen, as soon as I get the same upgrades as Max Verstappen, I should be alongside him. Then we'll see. You can't be sure that I'm even driving the same car. Christian Horner told me once upon a time that if he could run a race with just the Max Verstappen leg, that he would. Well, what happens now, Tsunoda-san? Now you've got to show and prove, chap. Now you've got to overperform, go above and beyond, lest you wish to be thrown on the Red Bull heap alongside Alex Albon, alongside Pierre Gasly, Scott What's-His-Face. All of them that came before. You've got no chance, chap. Most recently, Liam Lawson. And of course, Checo Perez. I think Tsunoda-san's time is gonzo done. Because if it weren't, you wouldn't hear that type of tonnage, that verbiage coming out of the mouth of the now Oracle Red Bull Racing Team principal, Lauren Mekies. Oh, and by that, was a bit cryptic that Honda said that they would like to work with mate Remco. Of course, they would like to work with Max in future. They want to work with the best. Of course, they'd love to. A Japanese driver is always going to be priority, but a fast driver comes a not too distant second as far as priorities for Honda. They understand. You know what I mean? When they can do all the collaborations and put Max in the NSX or whatever, that does one of these for the marketing. Like to have a 4-time champion in there, a Max Verstappen, a fire-breathing dragon, man who is built difference and a difference maker. I'm telling you, it's gonna get okay. Go on then, turn one. I don't know what's going to happen. Listen, I hoped that OJP was going to put the moves on Lando Norris just as he did last year, but the fact that he gave Lando Norris a toe. Okay, so he's commanded to do so, but bloody, what do we do? Can you imagine Tom Stollard comes over the radio and says to Max, hypothetical, indulge me for a second, comes over the radio and says to Max, you know what, Max, Yuki's under threat here, and they're competing for the championship. Yuki's under threat here. He might not get through to Q3. Do you mind giving him a toe going through? You wouldn't even get a response from Max Verstappen. Do you remember when they asked Max, oh, could you switch back and give Checo Perez the place in Brazil in 2020? He was like, what are you? I told you not to ask me that already this summer. Don't ask me those stupid questions again, because he's a fire-breathing jack. Copped the flack. The world, all of a sudden, the virtue signalling F1 community hated Max Verstappen for that. But that's a hill that he's prepared to die on. You know what I mean? Not going to give, no quarter given, and I don't dislike that in my old age, because I like my F1 not to be F1 snowflakery. This is nonsense. I say all that to say this. Here's hoping that Oscar, it's going to be toe central, isn't it? Going into turn one, it is chaos. And going into the second chicane, it is also going to be chaos. Although, remember, Oscar Piastri last year did something that was... I've never, ever seen somebody overtake around the outside going into the second chicane. I've never, ever seen it. It was unprecedented circumstance. And it was a very unorthodox manoeuvre, let's say, as far as an overtake. It's really difficult to overtake around Monza. It is really difficult. You'll have an opportunity into the first chicane, but then it double backs on itself. So where do you put your car? You go up the inside, or do you wait for... It's really, really difficult. And that it being the temple of speed. So I don't know what's going to happen going into the first one. And Max is going to he's going to get his elbows out wickedly. Max is driving a Ford now. Is he? Blimey. I mean, marketing potential, eh? I might have to look at that Mustang GTD film. I might have to go and revisit it. If Max is driving it, I mean, if it's good enough for Max, then surely it's got to be good enough for you and me. And we, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think Tsunoda could reach a 7. Leclerc could reach 8. Bloody Norris. Tsunoda 7 and Charles Leclerc 8 only. I have a word. I can't indulge that level. I'm partial to a bit of modern day genre lazy blasphemy, but that Tsunoda 7 and Leclerc 8. Oof, no. I understand what you're saying around Max, that Max is a different level, at least at the moment. At least he has been for the past 2 or 3 years. Right, listen, as we're around third base, we go live 30 minutes before lights out. It's going to get techie. Turn 1 is going to be mayhem. But I think that context is key. The Oscar Piastri willing now to listen to Tom Stollard to enable the only rival he has to win his first championship to get to Q3 and out-qualify him ultimately, putting it on P2. Do you think for a second that Max Verstappen would indulge such F1 snowflakery competing for a championship? You bet your bottom dollar he would not. That, ladies and gentlemen, is chaos. I will see you 30 minutes before lights out. What really are we doing here?